quite a long and winding road from about 30 years ago, and yet you're still young.
Well, well, not quite that young. Hanging in there.
I mean, the inspiration, does it come sort of intermittently, or you're always working, you're always doing stuff, you're always producing people. It seems like a lot of songs, a lot of music pouring out. Is it an ongoing process for you?
Yeah, it has. I mean, I haven't written for a while. I feel like I haven't I've said all I've got to say for a while, but I definitely had we definitely had a burst of creativity there over the last, say, 4 years or something, with Coral Island and then doing these 2 albums.
I mean, is it the concept that kind of comes first? I know with Coral Island, it's like lots of little pieces of songs, bits of ideas, which you literally corralled into an album about, a faded seaside town. And so it was. I'm guessing last time out, it was just the music was there first, the bits and pieces there first. You made it to a thing, and this time it's like it's sort of like an Italian spaghetti western is thematically. So which way around is it?
Well, what happened was Parr Street was closing down, and I think at this point we hadn't even released Coral Island. It was because we'd sat on that for a year because of all the lockdowns, and in the end we just put it out, which actually worked in our favour. But so we just ended up being like, well, Chris, who ran the place, was like, well, should we record something? What have you got? And we were like, well, we'll just come in and we'll just write stuff. I want to get out the house. So we'd write stuff on the day, really. And then we didn't really look at it until Parr Street had closed down. We took away a Dropbox and we sort of realised we had 2 different things, like songs that were like narratives, almost country, and these more like linear sort of stream of consciousness music, something different, like dream music. And so we split them, and then from there we started to work out what they were. But we would, at that time as well, Paul, the bass player, he knew someone who was trying to make a sort of spaghetti western horror movie, and had asked us to do the soundtrack. So that had sparked that little idea. And then, yeah, we sort of embellished both albums from that point. There was maybe 4 or 5 basic tracks recorded. And then, yeah, once you get a concept, it does help you finish it.
I mean, did the movie ever get finished, or did you ever see the movie?
No.
Or did
you
just imagine it in your head? Yeah.
Yeah, it was called, which is not our movie, but the movie he was making, he actually got a semi-finished version. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like a werewolf cowboy movie, and he's obviously thought, I'll get the Coral to do that. For me, it was more about, I watched the spaghetti western documentary, and I like this idea of someone said the directors were just using the genre. So they weren't necessarily western fans. They were using it to make a comedy, a horror. The Mexican Revolution ones were political movies. And so they were just using it, basically. And I just really like that idea of using the genre of it to make a record.
Yeah, so in a way, you're working very much in that tradition that the spaghetti western directors were working on 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, but I think, when you have on those revelations where you read someone and realise that you've been doing that all your life. Like, we'll take a genre of music, Mersey beat, and then twist it, and we'll use it to make it into a ghost story or something. But we'll use that genre of music in a way without knowing that that's what we were doing. So it sort of resonated with me, that idea of taking genre things, genre films, genre music, and just twisting that medium and using it, bastardizing it to whatever you want to make that.
So in a way, using it to colour and maybe texture the songs you kind of already have.
Yeah, because it wasn't a film that's not. It's the idea is that it's a film about everything going wrong on the set and all the characters trying to get it together on the set. And the main character is a guy who was a great star and he isn't really anymore. He's in B movies. And I think when we was writing it in lockdown, turning 40 and looking out and thinking, how the fuck did we get here? I could relate to that character.
Yeah. So like the dysfunctional nature of the film, it's a bit like being in a band and being creative in a band in your world as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the idea is, yeah, as I said again, we were using that genre and that idea to make this sort of existential art thing or whatever it is, like sort of tone poem of this guy's life of he's looking back on. But it was definitely personal as well at that point. But I think by separating yourself from myself, I don't know if it's a northern thing, but I find by separating myself, I can write more personally about it, about myself and what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I mean, that runs through all your releases, doesn't it? I mean, you know, thematically, they might be about something else or making a painting in a sense, but they do ironically have a deeply personal nature to them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even a decision to cloak something is personal, and you're getting to know to someone by realizing that they've done that. As in, you know, sometimes you want to say it dead on the nose, and sometimes you want to wrap it up in a nice bow.
I mean, with it also sort of sonically, were you influenced by the soundtracks of spaghetti westerns? I can hear flavors
Definitely.
of it. I can hear the twang guitars, the amazing Sergio Leone sense of space that you have in these tracks as well. I can feel that in there.
But I also love the way, say, I listen to like Johnny Remember Me and Joe Meek stuff, The Shadows, and that pre-Beatles, even Del Shannon, you know, that echoey rock and roll. And I hear spaghetti westerns taken from that. And I think, because almost that music was like some kind of beat music trying to make Western music, like a John Wayne Western, and bastardizing that. And then I hear spaghetti western taking something like Apache or Johnny Remember, especially Johnny Remember Me with the choral thing. And I hear that in it. So I think that is, we were kind of trying to do like, well, how would Lee Hazelwood or Joe Meek or these sort of chamber echo masters, how would they take on a soundtrack to one of these films?
So did you do, I mean, obviously from the sound of the records, you produce the records, and this is probably yes, but you've obviously taken a deep dive into this. I mean, you've studied like Joe Meek and all these people and the way they created these sounds. And do you utilize them in a modern kind of way as well?
Yeah, well, I think one thing, you don't want to do a pastiche, but I think what it is with those people, those artists, and Spector's probably the ultimate, is it's grand ideas, almost operatic grand ideas under limitations. Like Phil Spector had to bounce down onto one track, but it gave it this intensity and this. See, if that had like 1 million tracks, it would just be Celine Dion.
Yeah.
But it's then the hitting it and the distortion and the rage of it coming back in that way, of it all being squashed down. So it's like a big bang when it comes out of it. And I think that, so we put limitations on ourselves. You know, it was a lot of it was recorded in what was almost a makeshift bedroom. And
so with that being
like that,
you record it in a very lo-fi way, and then before you had your own studio, you take it to Park Street to
No, it's because Park Street. So a lot of it, like say, when we first did it, it would be like Ian on drums, me on acoustic, a guide vocal, maybe Paul put some bass down, or I did. That's it. And then we took the songs away. That's all we had at first. And we kept them. It just so happened that we kept all the guide vocals. We never really had that much time to redo them. So you know, and we said we only want 3 mics on the drums. That's it. We don't want 1 million options, or we'll be here forever. And then when Park Street closed down, Chris, who we co-produced it with us, he just had basically a room in a rehearsal studio. So there'd be like a heavy metal band rehearsing one side, there'd be like an indie band the other. We'd have to wait till it was quiet, get our turn, and then pick on this little classical guitar, but in the same room, no separation. So there might be if you got it, you could probably hear breathing and talking and someone on the phone, but I wanted that and I like that.
I mean, when you built your new studio, which you're sat in now, do you take these ideas into that environment, or?
No, because that's high tech, but I've learned, this is top spec. This place got Atmos mixing and everything, but this is like, I know if I'm in a studio and I want it to be lo-fi, then I'd just be like, just set up one microphone, just put one microphone in the middle and distort everything, or go in the room together.
Yeah, so it gives you the options if you want to do. Because I mean, with a new album, See Mirrors, it's the production it does sound more polished in a good way.
A lot of it was done in mastering. A lot of it was done in mastering where it was quite. We basically saved a lot of the budget to get one of the best mastering guys in the world, Greg Calby, and I think he did pull a lot of the record together, the low end, the top end, in a way that is like, I mean, he mastered Graceland, Born to Run. He's John Lennon. So we kind of left the final sonic up to him to pull together, and he did a great job. And I think that kind of took it into a new sonic level, really. Yeah,
it does sound bigger, a lot bigger. It's amazing how important the mastering is now. It used to be about 10% of the sound, and now I reckon it's about 50%, isn't it?
Yeah, but what it is a lot of people say we were in this little room. There's no sound treatment. You don't really know what the low end is. Then you're just getting home and listening to it on a Bose speaker that's in the corner of your room. There's no accurate level for top or low end in what we had until the very last moments when we'd already mixed it. So we kind of just added together, and you just had to trust someone who was top of their game to bring it all together, really. So it was worth spending the money on that.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a consistency from beginning to end.
The low end as well is like, is probably the sort of most professional we've had.
So you seem to like doing two albums. I mean, the last with Coral Island, there was like a summer and a winter version, and now you've got two albums again.
It was meant to be two albums, and it was actually Noel. I tried to explain it to him, and he was like, "What the fuck are you going on about? Just put a double album out." And I was he was like, "That's what I want off the Coral." And then I thought, he's probably right. And then once I told everyone, was like, "Yeah, just put it out as a double album." And we'd kind of given up on it at that point because of all the lockdowns, and then it just was a perfect storm for us in ratio to us, if you know what I mean. Everyone else put their albums back, we put ours out. Everyone was sort of looking back on maybe their old seaside holidays, or thinking, I'm never going to get to go abroad again, so I better get used to the seaside. And it sort of resonated with people.
Yeah, because it was like very summer winter at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was definitely, was kind of, it would have worked as two things, but it was definitely a good move to make it a double.
And of course, you're from the seaside town, aren't you? So
from Hoylake, and then lived up in like near New Brighton ways when I lived up in Wallasey for a while. I live in West Kirby now. We'd always go to the seaside when we were kids, Blackpool. So definitely, I couldn't imagine being landlocked.
Yeah. I grew up in Blackpool. I can identify the summer winter thing very strongly.
Yeah. I mean, it's especially when, last time I went to Blackpool, it definitely felt like a forgotten place.
Yeah, but the winter's always the best part of a seaside town, though. That kind of melancholic emptiness.
But if you have that type of, if you're a writer or an artist, probably most people would just be like, this is really depressing. But we're seeing the in between. We're seeing the ghosts, and it's our job to report on the ghosts. You know what I mean?
I like that. It's very good. So, the new album, the same thing as well. It's there's two albums, isn't there? So I mean, what's the difference? I've only got one of them, not heard the other one. So far,
You've heard
Sea of Mirrors.
You've heard the Sea of Mirrors. Yeah, the other one is actually a carry on from Coral Island. It's a radio show from Coral Island, but I'll get Rob to send it. It's really good. So my granddad's on it. He's Holy Joe, the radio host, and the theme is that it's a kind of country. It's our version of a country album, and the rule was in every tune someone has to die. So in the end, we were crowbarring deaths in left, right, and centre to get on the album. But yeah, it's really good. But it's not going on streaming; it's just physical.
So it doesn't. It's not really part of the Sea Mirrors. It's a different. Or do they cross over?
It's a completely different. Maybe Wild Bird could have possibly gone on the other one, but each one is a story. It's like told either as like first or third person story. Whereas Sea of Mirrors is quite linear, isn't it? And there will be multiple subjects, or it's more almost like subconscious music. Where this is like straight up, I did this, I did that, or once we did this. You know.
I mean, when you put the track list together for Sea of Mirrors, do you think of it in terms of being a film, telling a narrative, telling a story?
Yeah, definitely. And also, it's got to work musically. And half the time you end up doing it almost in the order you record it because you become used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And you start recording it thinking, oh, this one would work next. So I've had a lot of practice because of half the albums I've produced, I've track listed them as well. So I think I'm not too bad at it now.
Yeah. I mean, with all those productions, it seems like you produce nearly everything that comes out of the northwest of England at the moment. I mean, does that feedback into your own work at all, or do you look at it as a very, very different kind of project?
Yeah, I'm probably it's harder to produce yourself. Things I wouldn't indulge in other people, I will indulge in myself. Don't tell them.
I mean, do you find it changes the way you write, or does it kind of cross influence at all?
A lot of the time, your situation can change the way you write. If it's the situation we were in on Sea of Mirrors was like we had a lot more time. It was almost like we were teenagers because of lockdown. So we would write sections that would completely change, like we did on the first album, where it would go into a completely different bit. Because we kind of felt we will never have this chance again. Once the world comes back, it's back, and we'll never have this chance. The world will never stop again. So we thought we were going to take this chance.
Again, filling in the empty spaces, like in the seaside towns of winter.
Yeah, definitely. It was. Well, everyone in lockdown, the world stopped, didn't it? Like you would never have that much time to do art like that at my age, really, unless you're big. You know, unless you say, I would imagine when Coldplay or whatever, they could go be like, look, here's a load of money, take the kids wherever we're going here to do. We're not getting away with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
One foot in reality, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not, but you got to pick them up. You got to pick the kids up then. And so, you know, we thought we'd take that chance.
I mean, I know with songwriting, things come from everywhere. Don't you can hear a tune in your head, you can be messing around with guitar. But sometimes they start the lyrics, or do you put the lyrics on afterwards, or is it varied?
Different. Sometimes, like say, Wild Bird just came in a moment. I just felt a mood and I captured the mood. Sometimes I'll have a title, like Cycle of the Seasons, Sea of Mirrors, and they'll just sit there and I'll just wait for something to present itself that deserves that title. And then I work backwards from the title.
So the title suggests the atmosphere of the song, or even the melody as well sometimes.
Yeah, so like say, Sea of Mirrors, Bill Ryder-Jones in lockdown, just out the blue, just sent me some chords, the verse chords, just picking them. And he said, you should do something with this. And I think he was just bladdered. Never, I don't even think he remembered it. And then I thought those chords sound like the phrase Sea of Mirrors. I can hear the reflections. And So then I wrote like a chorus over the chords he'd written with the sea of mirrors, and and a little sort of abstract little thing I'd written down fitted over it. The reflection of yourself reaching out for help. I'd written that, just wrote it in my notes, and it just fitted perfectly. And then, so I just wrote, you're just writing it backwards then, from the title. So a lot of stuff is just titles that I have floating around, and a lot of titles I have is like, what is the title of a B movie I wish exists, or what is the title of a Steve Ditko comic I wish, a mystery comic that exists, or a book. And it'll just be, Cycle of the Seasons or Sea of Mirrors, Oceans Apart. I'll just have those things floating around. Butterfly House, something like that. That'll just be sort of, it can suggest a million things. And I'll have those floating about. And then I usually work backwards from them. When I have a moment of inspiration, I've usually got a backlog I can go into. Melodically, I'm usually looking for a moment that just happens.
I mean, are you one of those people who walks down the street singing into your iPhone?
No. After time, I don't. I'll do it. I'll make a video of it, and that'll be it. And then I usually just remember it. I didn't used to really write lyrics down, but I've got to now. Really, doing double albums, you got to write them down. But then
it's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Say I know what I have to write. I'll just write 4 or 5 tunes if I know I've got to write them. But if I don't, I don't really write for the sake of it anymore. I think I might have done that when I was younger because I felt I had to be worth something. But these days, I don't really write unless I think someone's going to hear it.
So for you, is it a bit like what Tom Waits said, that the songs are always flying around the air and you just have to pluck them out of the air?
Yeah, so basically, the more you get tuned in, the more you pluck. And it's like anything, you haven't played the guitar for a while, you need to practice for a bit. And then before you know it, you've got a riff. Sometimes you have to write 2 tunes to get to the tune you want, maybe.
Or to open the tap,
Yeah, but these days, most of that, I don't have many that don't get used. I try and be economic with what I'm going to give out with the time that I have to do it in.
Would you find if you get like a really great melody, you think, I'm sure someone else has had this before?
Yeah, sometimes, but then I think I have my own phrasing that sort of twists it into sounding like the choral.
So your influences, they go way beyond music, like I said before. Like film's really important. So the visual side's really important across all kind of medias and ideas, all feeding in there.
Yes, definitely. I get a lot from books, T.S. Eliot, or I get a lot of Richard Yates. I like things that are kind of fragmented views of like thought process in a way, almost like they're trying to make sense of themselves as you're reading them. I like that idea.
And is that influencing the way you try and write as well, or is it just because the fracture nature of it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I've always had sort of 2 sides to me writing. I've got like Bill Mackay, and then I've got, in a way, say 2 bigs, Bill Mackay or Pass It On. They're on the same album, but lyrically, Pass It On's almost like just each line is almost a little fable, and it's like a stream of consciousness. But Bill Mackay is like a straight up story, but they're kind of about trying to figure out the same thing in a way.
So are you one of those people, are you fascinated by words and the sound of words, and sound of words suggests?
Moods. I'm fascinated by a mood in a room or in a situation, in the air. Like there is a mood in that you walk out on certain days in the summer, the way the shadows will be cast and the way the air smells, there will be a mood then that is a picture that I want to paint in sound. Like say, That's Where She Belongs. I'm trying to paint a picture of that mood, of that moment, that summer, that that like golden moment that if you get that and you can do it, you have a duty to do that.
Mm-hmm. And is that why there's a lot of nature motifs in the music as well? Because
yeah, well, a lot of it was just all you could do was go on a walk, wasn't it, at that time? And a lot of it is about, from my window, you can see there's an entry leading to the sea, and at the bottom of that entry are just seagulls that circle every morning. Half the album's about looking out that window, but I had to get like 10 tunes out of it, so spreading it thinly by the end.
That's to make the seagulls have to be co-writers.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Well, they wake me up enough.
I mean, so now, like post-pandemic, is it harder to create? You know, you said that space is great for the creative process. Or is it just changing again? You know, now obviously going to do this album, then something in the future. Will it change that the future writing at all?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not in any hurry to write anything or do anything. I'm producing people again, enjoying taking a step, you know, I'm actually really looking forward to playing live. I would like to get something together acoustically where we really, while we're all still good singers, while you're you know, semi-young enough to hit the notes, I'd like to get something together where it was really about our vocal harmonies while we can still do it, and play some nice venues and showcase our vocals.
When you play these songs live, does it change the nuance? Does it change what they are? You know, I did the songs always fun as well.
The songs on Sea of Mirrors, to play them live, we've just got to change them. We do more of like a Celtic soul, Van Morrison type of take on them live, because we have got strings, fake string sound of it. You know, we use Mellotron on a couple, but we've just done them as more, just approach them in the live setting. How would you do them? And then it stops you getting bored as well, often. I think they're two separate things, studio and live.
Does that change the nuance of the song, you know, what it's about by the way you play it? Or does it somehow retain that, but just played in a different way?
Yeah, but they're more like early, they're more like kind of like psychedelic Birds, like the Birds, just like a take, like how the Birds would play them or something, get a 12-string electric rather than the acoustics, and almost like a, you know, a Paisley Underground take on the songs for live.
There's a real timelessness about your music. I mean, some of the influences are quite old influences now, but they sound fresh and modern. Is that something you try and do, or is that does not matter at all? It's just how the song writes itself.
Yeah, I don't want it to be pastiche, and I think sonically you would never have a record that had like a low end like that. And I think also, yeah, I just don't. I think growing up, maybe through like Oasis, the Lars, the Bunnymen, Shack, the Roses, there'll be an element melodically and vocally, even the early sort of first like Primal Scream stuff or whatever, when you're younger, and that coming through us that bands from the 60s wouldn't have heard. So it was like a sort of 80s post-punk take on the 60s, but we were kind of influenced by that as much as the 60s. So I think that is in there fused with the origin of what they were listening to, and that's why it's got something unique that neither of those things have got.
Yeah, it's like post-punk take on it.
Yeah. It's I mean, post-punk now is a different. It's kind of like a lot of it is sort of sub-all, I think, where like the stuff I found interesting of what you would, you know, to follow one of my favorite bands, and you know, it's like anything. You get the people who first sort of do it, they were great. We seem to be at the arse end of it now, but I found interesting. I like the Bunnymen, you know, in that thing. The Smiths, the ones who sort of had, I really like felt, you know, that sort of, the almost had like a jangly 60s thing, but with a punk ethos. I was always drawn to that.
And in a sense, like a northern psychedelia as well, which does.
Yeah, definitely that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely from the Roses. Like I wouldn't say and the Bunnymen were more. They kind of were quite gothic, but they had an element of that. The Lars were more beat, where I would say the Roses, we definitely took a haziness and a sort of, and especially with working with John Leckie on Butterfly House, I sort of learned some of his tricks, how he would layer that haze, and I can hear what he did with the Roses, where he would find between notes, he would find like oscillations and move. So it would be modulating between guitars tracked up. So between that, you would then have like ghost notes, but he'd build them and build them. So there's more and more of them. And it just makes this sort of 3D psychedelic, phasey haze, which is just that summer. It's got that summer psychedelic on mushies feel, hasn't it? But I don't know whether that's like a northern thing, but definitely we grew up with that. Of like, if you haven't got that, you weren't real to us, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's interesting. The northern psychedelia is so different from, say, a '60s West Coast psychedelia, and I often wonder if
it's
it's because
Northwest Coast, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, I always call it that. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
It's like,
did you someone coined that years ago? And I remember thinking, I thought it might have been you, but I thought, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because it's got that like no take no shit northern attitude thing, and almost and a huge, a sort of self-deprecating thing, which is very opposite to the California thing, but it's definitely influenced by that haze, but put through this Northwest filter, and it does come out as a unique thing in a way.
Yeah,
I would say that's where She Belongs, when we were kind of stuck on it, and it sounded quite Nashville and straight. And once I got it, it was like, right, it's got to go Northwest Coast. Turn all the reverb backwards, turn the guitar backwards, and put it all behind it. And then I was like, now we've got psychedelic summer haze, the Northwest Coast, and I was happy with it then.
Yeah, it always needs that twist and a little bit of backwards guitar.
Yeah, it's just as soon as it was in there, I was like, you can't go wrong.
I think I like the idea. It's like a grey sky psychedelia, like California. It's endless sunshine.
Yeah.
Over here, it's definitely not, is it?
It's pure escapism here. They're already there. So after time, I think I prefer the Northwest imagination, sort of projected version of that time than the reality of it. I think if I was in a reality of it, I just think they were all bellends.
Yeah.
But I prefer, it's like anything, I always prefer the myth than the reality.
Yeah, it's somewhere between the imagined version of the myth and the celebration of the greyness of where you actually already are, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't. I think the greyness makes the myth. You wouldn't create the myth together if it wasn't for the greyness that you needed to escape from.
And is that what you're bringing to your productions as well? Are you sort of bringing in like a John Leckie type role, or I mean, very much.
I learned a lot from Leckie. I learned a lot from Ian Brodie. I learned a lot from Jeff Barrow, Craig Silvey, Adrian Utley, everyone we've worked with, masters we've worked with, who are some of the some of the best in the world, and I feel lucky to have been schooled in that way and worked with those people. So I take bits from everyone, and then you obviously have your own personality. And I don't like to labour over things unless it's my thing. But if it's someone else's, I like to get it done fast, and I'd rather just do it again. Because otherwise you miss the energy.
I mean, do you see your role as to sculpt the sound and put the sound in a place, or do you get involved? Some producers get involved in the songwriting as well and help.
No, it's before that. I prefer to be like, what is this? And like get it before we go in. Ideally, I like it if the band do demos, and then I work on the demos with them, and then I know what they want, and I know it's coming from them, and they're relaxed when they go into the studio then, and they feel like they're in charge. and then you're going, okay, I can see what this is before you get in the studio. And then the studio, you're just having fun and capturing it. And a lot of the sort of, and you and the band are surprising you, and you're picking it out, and it's a lot more natural.
Yeah,
and it also shows, and a good attitude by them that they've got in there and they've done demos and they've put the mics up, and then they also understand a bit more of the process, and they understand the limitations because they've hit brick walls themselves before they've got there.
I like the way somehow with what you do and the production, you turn it into a pop music as well. It's not willfully underground, is it? These are records.
No. I'm kind of like, well, you want people to hear it, and also I always loved it to be almost like a mini soap opera each song, or a mini film each moment, like and you're capturing that. And that's what I love about all the Spectre stuff. It was like some kind of teen psychodrama every song.
Yeah.
And I love that, each thing being that, each moment. And and I sort of, and mostly I'll try and help them with the lyrics, or especially when they're young and they first come in, they might have too many words in one bit, and just help them say, I know what you're trying to say, but can you say it in a shorter way? And just help them with experience, really. And sometimes you learn from them and then take that into your stuff, because they're younger and they think of something you'd never have thought of.
Well, do you see music as your main, obviously it's your main place for creativity, or do you think you could make go on to later years, make your own films, write books, using the same kind of ideas?
Well, me and Nick have kind of got an idea, but he can write outside of music and I can't really. I think I've put everything in one box. So it would be quite rude of me to think I could just jump into another box that I haven't really done any work on. And God help anyone who had to proofread anything I'd written, spelling wise.
Spell check.
No one did. Yeah. I'm beyond spell check. I don't think. I think I've kind of perfected what I do in my own way of what I'm happy with. So yeah, at the moment I'm enjoying not doing it.
So you're just running the studio and just
doing studio, doing bits of producing people and doing stuff, rehearsing for live and doing everything but writing, really.
Brilliant. Well, I'm just nearly end of time here, 20 seconds go. So thanks for that, James. Thanks for your time.
Nice one, Rob. No problem, mate.
Good to see a Ringo on the mantelpiece behind you.
Oh, yeah, that's my mate's Lego Ringo, yeah.
Lego Ringo, that's good name for a band.
I know it is, yeah. They'll be on Six Music soon, won't they?
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thanks a lot anyway, yeah.
Okay. All right, man. Nice one.
See ya.
See you, man. Bye.